On Friday, the end of Friday, we talked just a little bit about matrix algebra and writing equation systems using the tools of matrix algebra. And you recall we left off talking about this model right here. What I'm doing is writing m equations in n variables. An equation system with m equations in n variables. Furthermore, notice all these equations are linear equations. Okay. The exponents on each of these variables, x1, x2, xn, are all 1. Okay. And there are no terms like x1 times x2 in the equations. So all the equations are linear. I will just write the first two equations, then I'll skip to the last equation. And the last equation would be now in these equations, what are the terms aij? You've got a bunch of terms aij. And what are these aij terms in words? There are a couple of words you could use to describe what these aij terms are. Notice I'm referring to these terms like A11, A12, A1n. Yes, Ben?
They're scalar. It's a scalar. Aij.
Yeah.
The row and the
Right. The I subscript represents the row. The J subscript represents the column in which the term appears. And these aij terms, they are scalars. They're real numbers. What else could you refer to these aij terms as? They are, think about the ingredients of a model, an economic model. The aijs would be parameters. And you could also refer to them as coefficients. They're the coefficients on the variables. They're multiplied times the variables. Okay. So the parameters or coefficients. What about these terms on the right? D1, D2, dm. They are, how would you describe them in words? Are they variables? No. Well, you could possibly interpret them in some cases as being exogenous variables, but really you should think of them as being parameters. They're unspecified constants. They're right-hand side constants. Okay. What are the variables in this model? What? The x's. x1, x2, x3. Okay. Let me give you an example of how you would write an equation system, a very simple equation system in this matrix algebra form. Let's take this equation system right here. The simplest Keynesian model. Y equals C plus I plus G. and C equals A plus BY. If you were to write this in matrix algebra form, what would you have to do? Notice in this case right here, what's true? The variables are x1, x2, xn. And they're all aligned in columns, aren't they? Is that the way this is written? No. Because you could see in this equation, y is by itself on the left-hand side, and right below it is c. So how would we rewrite this equation system to get it into this format? No, we don't want to solve for y here. We just want to write it in matrix algebra form. Okay. Well, perhaps this is too difficult a question. Let me just show you how it's done. The two variables in this model are what? What are the two variables in this model? Oh, okay, let me just forget it. What are the two variables? Y and Z. Okay. So you could just arbitrarily choose an order. Let's let Y come first. In other words, we're going to let Y correspond to x1. And we're going to let C come next, so it'll correspond to x2. So we would have to rewrite this first equation how? If I wanted to get it into that format. Exactly, Ben. Just subtract C from both sides. And then this equation would be Y minus C equals I plus G. And I'm going to put parentheses around I plus G. And just think of that as a single entity. Now that first equation would be in the matrix algebra format. Y comes first, C comes second, and then everything else that's not a variable goes on the right-hand side. So what would the second equation be then, if I wanted to write it in that same format? Yeah. No, not divide both sides by y. Yeah, subtract by from both sides. Then, and put that first, minus by plus c equals a. Now you see our variables are aligned in columns. Y occurring first and c second. The right-hand side constants here are the parameters d1 and d2. So this is our d1. This is our d2. What is a11 now in this model? Anybody? 1. It's just the coefficient on y right here. What is a12? Negative 1. It's just this coefficient right here on C. What is a21? Minus b. And what is, this is a capital C here. What is a22? 1. Okay. So if you want to write it in this matrix algebra format, that's the way you'd have to transform it.